Hey guys, I'm really excited to tell you about the 3 types of lectures. Now, the order that I'm going to go in is starting with formal lectures, going into interactive lectures, and ending with interactive slide lectures. And so, in that order, we start from the least amount of student involvement to the most amount of student involvement. And so, that will really help you gauge, depending on the day in your classroom and how much involvement you want or need, or how quick you need to get through something, what type of lecture you would like to choose if lecturing is your thing. So the first one I want to start it with is formal lectures. And so a formal lecture is pretty much what comes to mind when you think of a classic lecture. So basically the students don't really involve much with the content unless it's a quick question in the middle of the conversation, or sometimes teachers will have the students wait till the end of the presentation to share their thoughts or ask their questions. So this is very time effective, which would be a big advantage of it. It is quick to get through content, especially if you've fallen behind, because we all know that happens. So you can get through information and get through content without having to stop the presentation, again, except for the certain instances of questions. But the questions, it's just something quick to be answered. It's not a discussion in the middle of class. Some disadvantages, however, personally I believe is the disadvantage if the students aren't interacting. I think that having the one-way communication, often it makes it difficult for students to stay attentive and stay actively listening. And a lot of times students do a lot better by doing and not always by hearing, which we talked about in class last week. So they don't have the opportunity to do when it's a formal lecture. In addition, students don't learn at the same pace, so just going through content can be difficult. The next one is interactive lectures, which bumps up the interaction a little bit. So in this, usually the teacher will speak for a little bit and then have discussion or have an activity and then speak more. So it's kind of like a mini lecture to shorten up the content that needs to be gone through, but to still give students opportunities to speak and to be involved. And so there can be really many types of activities. So they try to have interaction at least once or twice throughout the lecture in this case. And so some of the advantages of that is you can it's easier to grab and maintain the attention of the students, of your audience. It increases learning and retention of information. Again, the student interaction is a really big plus, and it gives students an active role in the learning process, which we all know is very important depending on your philosophy. Some disadvantages, however, is you may not be able to get through information as quickly as you would be able to in a formal lecture. And when students are involved in the learning process, you have to be aware that things will take longer usually, and you have to be able to adapt to what goes wrong. I know, I'm sure Ms. Cagley can give examples, and many teachers can give examples, and we'll have our own examples of times that you try a new activity and it doesn't really work, students aren't really having it, or you learn that, okay, maybe the technology doesn't work, lots of things like that can go wrong. So being able to adapt, and sometimes maybe you have to fall back on the traditional lecture. And so some examples of the student interaction that can happen during these interactive lectures, again, it would be sort of taking pauses in the content for students to ask questions and to be involved. One of the things that I remember doing in high school, which I think is a great way to create involvement, is to help students with something like analyzing a document. So I know for me personally in high school, I had a teacher who would put the document on our little thing. So the projector would project it, and we would go through and say, okay, well, this is who said it, and this is something about him, or this is the year, what was going on in that year. So allowing students to come up and take a turn and do that, it keeps them involved and keeps them attentive. And finally, the last type of lecture is the interactive slide lecture. Personally, this is an exciting one for me, one I would want to include in my classroom. This would be a slideshow presentation with opportunities for students to interact built in it. And so you can get very creative with this for sure. again, this is the highest student involvement out of the 3 types of lectures. It makes learning really, really fun for students. It gives them a lot of opportunities to get out of their seat, do something different, do something fun, get up to the board. And I think too, like, you can really incorporate a lot of different learning styles with this one, which is very exciting. Some disadvantages, again, the time. You just have to understand you're not going to get through content as quickly as you would with a normal lecture. And also technology. We all know technology has lots of issues, and it doesn't like to work always, so you have to keep that in mind. But some examples that I kind of came up with and I thought would be really cool would be like doing matching games. So maybe you're matching definitions or matching a year to an event. In history, doing something like that, doing an interactive map, I thought would be cool. For example, like if you had a map of the United States or a map of Europe, and having students put where the state or the country goes on there, and letting students take turns, I think that would be really cool. And there's a website, there's a link I'm gonna put in to my post, and it gave a lot of great examples, doing storytelling, non-linear presentations, polls, surveys, quizzes, games, and discussions/breakout groups. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do with these. And yeah, we all have our own style. So those are the 3 types of lectures that you can choose from and choose to incorporate in your future classrooms.